Hello, everyone. I'm Mr. Five. Today, I'm going to share an inspiring story about determination and justice. This story takes place at TACO, Los Angeles International Airport. On a late afternoon, when the sky is painted in a fiery orange glow beneath the setting sun. Amid the luxury of the VIP check-in area, where successful business people and first-class travelers prepare for their long journeys, an unexpected incident unfolds. A strong, intelligent, and fearless woman, Jada Brown, the CEO of a tech company, finds herself challenged in a place where she rightfully deserves respect. What seems like a minor dispute over a first-class seat on a flight to Paris soon reveals itself to be much more, a battle for rights, against prejudice, and for fairness. Jada is not just defending her seat. She is proving that no one has the right to undermine another person's worth based on personal biases. Will Jada give up her seat to avoid conflict? Or will she stand her ground, fight for what's right, and send a powerful message about justice? Now, let's dive into the story. Late afternoon at Los Angeles International Airport was bustling, but not chaotic. Planes lined up along the runway, their metallic wings glowing under the fiery orange hues of the sunset. Jada Brown stood in the VIP check-in area, her hand resting on a soft leather carry-on, her eyes calmly scanning the flight display screen. This was her first flight to Paris this year, not just for leisure, but for a major business opportunity. Jada was no ordinary woman. At 32, she was already the CEO of a rapidly growing tech company, one of the few black women to hold a leadership position in the industry. She had spent a decade building from nothing, enduring exhausting workdays, endless meetings, skeptical glances from investors and business partners. Now, she walked into the first-class check-in area with the confidence of someone who no longer needed to prove herself. Or so she thought. She was dressed in an elegant cream-colored blazer paired with matching trousers. No flashy jewelry, no ostentatious designer logos, yet there was an undeniable presence about her that made people turn their heads. As she placed her phone on the counter, a young airport employee named Rachel greeted her with a bright smile. "Good evening, Ms. Brown. How can I assist you?" Jada returned the smile, her voice warm yet assured. "I'm checking in for my flight to Paris. First class, seat 1A. Rachel glanced at the system and nodded. "Everything is set. Here's your boarding pass. Boarding will begin in about 15 minutes. Jada took the pass from Rachel and made her way into the first-class lounge. She poured herself a cup of Earl Grey tea, inhaling its soothing aroma, allowing herself a moment of calm after a long day. But even in such an exclusive, peaceful space, she could feel the weight of judgmental eyes. Across the room, a middle-aged couple stole quick glances at her, whispering to each other. A man in a navy blue suit, likely a businessman, glanced in her direction but quickly turned away, as if she didn't quite belong there. Jada was used to this. Since childhood, she had been fighting against stereotypes. Teachers who doubted her ability to pursue science, friends who dismissed her ambitions, male colleagues in the tech industry who underestimated her ideas simply because they couldn't picture a black woman leading. She had learned that in spaces where power traditionally belonged to a specific group, her very presence was often questioned. But today, she didn't have the time or energy to entertain those stares. Outside the lounge doors, a sharp voice rang out. "Noah! How did this happen?" Jada frowned slightly at the sound. A blonde woman in striking red high heels strode into the room. Olivia Wilson. Jada didn't know her personally, but she knew Olivia's type. The kind of confidence that bordered on arrogance. The smug half-smile, the way she sized people up as if they were merchandise in a luxury boutique. Olivia turned to a man in uniform, Noah Davis, the flight supervisor. "What's going on?" Noah asked. Olivia tilted her head, frustration dripping from her voice. "My seat, 1A. I always book that seat, but today someone took it." Noah checked his tablet before replying. "Ms. Wilson, I'm afraid 1A was reserved by another passenger." "That's impossible." Olivia scoffed, waving her hand dismissively. "I've been flying with this airline for 5 years. I always sit there." Noah hesitated slightly but kept his tone professional. "I understand, ma'am, but our system shows that another passenger booked this seat in advance." That was when Olivia's gaze swept across the lounge and landed on Jada. Immediately, her eyes darkened. Jada didn't need to hear another word. She knew exactly what Olivia was thinking. Someone like me isn't supposed to have that seat, right? Olivia stepped forward, her lips curving in a way that suggested she was about to say something both condescending and dismissive. "Excuse me," she said, her voice sharp as a blade, "but I think there's been a mistake. I always sit in 1A. Maybe you booked the wrong seat?" Jada set her tea down calmly. She had nothing to prove. But she never backed down from people like Olivia. "There's no mistake," Jada replied smoothly, meeting Olivia's gaze head-on. "I reserved this seat." Noah looked uneasy, while Olivia pursed her lips in irritation. "Surely you could switch to another seat," Olivia said, her tone dripping with entitlement. "I have a platinum membership, and this is my usual seat. Airlines should prioritize loyal customers. You understand that, don't you?" Jada let out a soft chuckle. She had expected Olivia to wield her status as a weapon, but it didn't faze her. "Your loyalty to the airline doesn't mean I have to give up my seat," Jada responded coolly. "We're both customers, and I booked this seat fair and square." A tense silence settled over the lounge. Other passengers began to take notice, though no one dared to intervene. This was the kind of moment Jada faced every day, the moment when the world challenged her right to belong. Noah cleared his throat, trying to diffuse the situation. "Ms. Wilson, if you'd like, I can check for another available seat, but I can't move this passenger." Olivia let out a cold laugh. "I'll call senior management. They know me, and I'm sure they won't let this happen." Jada crossed her arms, her gaze unwavering. "Go ahead and do what you need to." Olivia spun on her heel and stormed out, phone pressed to her ear. Noah exhaled, glancing at Jada. "I apologize for the inconvenience." Jada nodded, but she knew this wasn't over yet. This wasn't just about a seat, it was about rights, about respect, and Jada had no intention of backing down. Jada Brown settled into her first-class seat, a window spot with a perfect view of the runway. She gently placed her premium leather bag on the tray table in front of her, savoring a rare moment of peace after days of relentless work. Paris wasn't just a luxury destination. For her, this trip was a pivotal step in her career. A multi-million-dollar tech deal was about to be signed, opening doors for her company to break into the European market. She exhaled softly, letting her mind drift over numbers and strategies. But the calm didn't last long. A voice, authoritative but laced with irritation, rang out from the aisle nearby, snapping her back to reality. "I cannot believe this. That seat is supposed to be mine." Jada glanced over and saw a picture-perfect blonde woman in an elegant dress stepping into the first-class cabin, clearly agitated. Olivia Wilson. The name instantly clicked the moment Jada saw her. A wealthy, high-profile figure in elite circles, a regular feature in financial magazines and luxury brand campaigns. She was known for her privilege, power, and the way she looked down on those she deemed beneath her. Jada had read about Olivia before, but never expected to face her in a direct confrontation. And yet, here Olivia was, standing right in front of her, clutching a ridiculously expensive Hermes handbag, her eyes scanning Jada as if assessing her worth. "Excuse me, is there a problem?" Jada asked, her voice calm. "There seems to be a mistake." Olivia replied, crossing her arms as in tilting her chin slightly. "This seat is mine." Jada wasn't surprised. She had seen that look too many times before, the way people like Olivia stared at her, as if her presence in first class was somehow an anomaly. But Jada wasn't easily rattled. She pulled up her phone, scrolled to her e-ticket, and held it up. "Seat 1A, booked 2 weeks ago." Her tone remained even, but her gaze was unwavering. Olivia arched an eyebrow and shrugged. "Maybe you were reassigned or got an upgrade," she said, her voice laced with thinly veiled condescension. "But I'm a Diamond Elite member with this airline, and I always have top priority. I'm certain this seat is mine." Oboe flight attendant Noah Davis approached, his professional smile intact, but his expression showing a hint of discomfort at the situation. "Is there an issue here?" he asked. Olivia seized the moment. "I believe there's been a system error," she said, brushing a perfectly manicured hand through her platinum blonde hair. "This seat has always been mine on every flight. I'm sure the airline will prioritize a loyal passenger like me, right?" Noah hesitated, his gaze flickering toward Jada, as if debating who should be given priority. But Jada wasn't about to let this drag on. "Can you check the system again?" she asked, her voice steady but sharp. Noah nodded, scrolling through the tablet in his hands. After a few seconds, he looked up, visibly conflicted. "I'm sorry, Miss Wilson, but according to our records, this seat belongs to Ms. Brown." Olivia let out a dry laugh. "I don't care what the system says," she snapped, waving her hand as if addressing a subordinate. "I booked this seat first. She can move to another one." Jada felt a slow, simmering anger rise in her chest. This wasn't just a petty dispute over a seat. This was a challenge. Olivia didn't just think she deserved priority. She believed Jada didn't belong here. Outside the airplane window, the Los Angeles sky had turned golden with the hues of sunset. The runway lights glowed like scattered gemstones in the fading daylight, casting shimmering reflections on the massive silver aircraft. Jada Brown took a sip of water from the crystal glass on the small table beside her, trying to steady herself after the confrontation with Olivia Wilson, the arrogant woman who had just attempted to take the seat she had rightfully booked. But Jada knew the storm wasn't truly over yet. From across the aisle, she could still feel Olivia's cold stare fixed on her, as if she had just committed some kind of unspoken violation. Olivia Wilson, a well-known businesswoman with deep connections and more money than she could ever spend, was likely not used to being told no, especially not in front of an audience. Not only had she failed to take Jada's seat, but she had been publicly shut down by Liam Garcia, one of the airline's senior managers, who had given her a blunt choice: accept reality or leave the plane. The silence after this battle wasn't a sign of peace. It was just a pause before the next wave. Jada opened her laptop, intending to focus on finalizing documents for her critical meeting in Paris. But as she typed a few lines, a nagging sense of unease crept in. Something felt off. She glanced at Olivia from the corner of her eye. The woman was on her phone, her fingers moving swiftly across the screen, her lips curling into a subtle, knowing smirk. That wasn't the smile of someone who had given up. A small ding came from Jada's phone, a message from Oliver Rodriguez, one of her closest advisors at the company. Oliver. Jada, I heard something happened on your flight. Are you okay? Jada frowned. How could Oliver possibly know already? She quickly typed back, Jada, I'm fine, but how did you hear about it? Within seconds, Oliver responded, Oliver, just saw a post circulating on social media. Looks like someone from the elite crowd is sharing a story about a woman who didn't know her place causing trouble on a flight to Paris. No names mentioned, but it seems like they're talking about you. A slow, simmering anger rose inside Jada. She didn't need to guess who was behind that post. Jada set her laptop aside, picked up her phone, and quickly found the post Oliver had mentioned. At Olivia W. Luck's life. It's unfortunate that some people don't understand how to behave in first class. Status doesn't buy class. First class disaster. Yacha, know your place. Below the post were hundreds of comments. Some people agreed, others questioned what had happened. But what infuriated Jada the most were the malicious comments speculating about her race, background, and why she was even on this flight. She understood now. Olivia couldn't win directly, so she was trying to win another way by twisting the story to fit her narrative. Jada wasn't new to the tactics of the elite. She had faced them in her early years as an entrepreneur, constantly proving her worth to those who sought to undermine her. But this time, she wasn't in a boardroom, where she could counter with data and strategy. This time, she was on a flight, trapped in the air with a woman determined to publicly humiliate her. As Jada considered her next move, a shadow appeared beside her. Noah Davis. The flight attendant who had tried to handle the earlier situation leaned down and spoke in a low voice. Ms. Brown, may I have a word with you in private? Jada studied him for a second, then nodded. Noah led her toward the small galley at the back of the first-class cabin, where fewer people were around. I wanted to apologize for what happened earlier, Noah said, tension in his voice. We're in a bit of a tricky situation. I just received an order from higher up to recheck your seat assignment. Jada crossed her arms, her gaze sharp. Why? Noah glanced around before answering. I can't say for sure, but it looks like certain people have reached out to the airline trying to pressure us into reassigning your seat. Jada let out a dry laugh. Olivia was still playing games behind the scenes. So what should I do? She asked. Noah sighed. You don't have to do anything. I just wanted to give you a heads up. Our airline has strict policies about passenger rights, but when high-profile people like Ms. Wilson get involved, things can get complicated. Jada understood the unspoken message. If the airline turned against her, she would have to fight back on her own. She met Noah's eyes and gave him a small, knowing smile. "Thanks for the warning." Noah nodded before stepping away. Jada returned to her seat, her mind already forming a plan. Jada reopened her phone and quickly typed a message to Oliver. "Jada, if Olivia wants to play on social media, I'll show her how this game really works." Oliver responded instantly. Oliver, "I take it you have a plan?" Jada, "Of course. Let me do what I do best. Turn the truth into power." She snapped a photo of the airplane window, the sunset reflecting off the wing, creating a breathtaking image. Then she opened Twitter and typed a post. "At Jada B, Tech Queen. Confidence in your place isn't rudeness. Standing up for your rights doesn't mean lacking class. I worked hard for this seat, and no one has the right to take it from me. Respect is universal, or no seat switching today." With hundreds of thousands of followers, Jada's post went viral within minutes. Supportive comments poured in, and soon her followers began exposing Olivia's antics for what they really were. Less than 20 minutes later, Olivia deleted her post. Jada smirked, setting her phone down. This battle might not be over, but she had won the first round. And Olivia Wilson was about to learn that going up against Jada Brown was never a wise decision. The first-class cabin remained quiet, but it no longer held the same peaceful atmosphere as before. The tension from Jada and Olivia's silent battle still lingered in the air, even though neither woman spoke another word. Passengers continued to steal curious glances at them, especially as Jada's post began drawing widespread attention. Outside, the runway lights sparkled brightly as the plane prepared for takeoff. Jada leaned back in her seat, closing her eyes for a brief moment. She wasn't afraid of Olivia's tactics, but she knew this wasn't over yet. And she was right. Just a few minutes later, a crew member appeared beside her. Noah Davis. The flight supervisor stood there with clear tension in his posture. "Ms. Brown, I need to have a word with you." Jada opened her eyes, looking up at him calmly. "About what?" Noah took a deep breath, as if carefully choosing his words. "We just received an official complaint from a passenger about your behavior on this flight." Jada wasn't surprised. "And I'm guessing that passenger is Olivia Wilson." Noah nodded. "Ms. Wilson claims that you were disrespectful and disruptive. According to airline policy, we have to assess the situation." Jada narrowed her eyes. She could hear the discomfort in Noah's voice. He knew this wasn't a genuine complaint. It was just Olivia's latest attempt to pressure her into submission. She remained calm, her voice firm and unwavering. "What exactly did I do besides defend my rightful seat? I wasn't loud. I didn't cause a scene. If anyone was being disruptive, it certainly wasn't me." Noah hesitated. "I understand that, but there's a lot of pressure from above." Jada paused for a moment, then smiled. "Then let above talk to me directly." She picked up her phone and dialed a familiar number. Oliver Rodriguez has answered immediately. "Jada, I assume you're calling about this?" "You assume correctly. I already heard about Olivia's complaint. Don't worry, I'm handling it." Jada chuckled. "I knew I could count on you." She ended the call and turned to Noah. "You can inform your higher-ups that I've contacted my legal representative. If they want to escalate this, I'm more than ready." Noah's eyes widened slightly before he gave a small nod. He knew one thing for sure. Jada Brown wasn't someone who could be bullied. As Jada continued to wait, she noticed Olivia whispering to Liam Garcia, another flight attendant. Liam seemed to be listening intently, nodding occasionally while casting glances in Jada's direction. Interesting, Jada thought. Olivia still isn't giving up. Not long after, Noah returned with news that was far from surprising. "Ms. Brown, my superiors have requested to speak with you as soon as we land." Jada smiled. "I'm looking forward to the conversation." As the plane reached cruising altitude, Jada tried to focus on her work, but a sudden voice from behind her made her pause. "I can't believe this." Jada turned to see a middle-aged passenger staring at his phone in outrage. "What's going on?" someone else asked. The man furrowed his brows, holding up his phone. Jada's post had gone viral, and now multiple news outlets were picking up the story. Another passenger glanced at Olivia, then shook their head. Unbelievable that people still act like this in this day and age. Jada remained silent. She knew the truth was speaking for itself. But there was one person who couldn't stay quiet any longer. Olivia Wilson shot up from her seat and stormed toward Jada. "Do you think just because you have a little influence on social media, you can do whatever you want?" She snapped, her voice filled with fury. Jada looked up, completely calm. "I didn't do anything. I just told the truth." Olivia let out a cold laugh. "You think you can beat me? You have no idea who you're up against." Jada tilted her head slightly. "Is that so? Let's see who actually leaves this plane first." About an hour later, as the plane neared its destination, a crew-wide announcement echoed through the first-class cabin. "Passengers, please remain seated. We have a situation that needs to be addressed before landing." Moments later, two airline officials entered the cabin. One was a senior airline representative, the other a security officer. The representative surveyed the cabin before speaking. "We have received reports of a disruptive passenger on this flight." Immediately, Olivia shot up. "Yes, I reported her," she declared, pointing directly at Jada, but the representative didn't look at Jada. Instead, he turned to Olivia. "After reviewing the situation, including reports from the flight crew and other passengers, we have determined that you, Ms. Wilson, are the one who has been causing a disturbance on this flight." Olivia's eyes widened in disbelief. "What?" The representative remained composed. "We must ask you to disembark the plane as soon as we land. Additionally, your platinum membership status will be temporarily suspended pending further investigation." The entire first-class cabin fell into absolute silence. Jada remained seated, her expression sharp but void of smugness. Justice had spoken, and she didn't need to do anything more. Olivia stood frozen for a moment before suddenly erupting. "You can't do this to me!" But they could, and they did. The two airline officials escorted Olivia out as the rest of the first-class cabin remained in a state of shock and quiet satisfaction. As the plane touched down, Jada slowly gathered her belongings. She checked her phone and saw a new message from Oliver. "Handled. Enjoy your trip." Jada smiled. She hadn't just held on to her seat. She had delivered a lasting lesson to those who underestimated justice. Stepping off the plane, She took a deep breath. She wasn't just flying to Paris for a business deal. She was flying toward a future where no one could easily strip away someone's rights just because they saw themselves as superior. The golden sunlight stretched across the tarmac as the aircraft landed at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris. The first-class cabin, usually a place of quiet luxury, still carried echoes of the earlier turmoil. Jada Brown stood up, adjusted her blazer, and collected her belongings. Defeating Olivia Wilson didn't bring her satisfaction, but it did bring her peace. Justice had been served, and she had stood her ground, but Jada knew the power games wouldn't end here. As she stepped through the aircraft door, a well-dressed man in a black suit approached her. "Ms. Brown, please come with me." Jada paused, narrowing her eyes at him. "And you are?" The man pulled out a badge, and the title on it immediately told Jada everything she needed to know. Oliver Rodriguez, Chief Operating Officer, Airline Corporation. Jada nodded, smirking slightly. Oliver had arrived sooner than she expected. "All right, I have a few things I'd like to discuss with you, too." Oliver led Jada to a VIP meeting room inside the airport, where a large conference table was set up with several senior airline executives already waiting. Among them, she recognized Noah Davis, the flight supervisor, and Liam Garcia, the flight attendant who had sided with Olivia. Oliver took a seat at the head of the table, crossing his arms. "Ms. Brown, I trust you understand why we're having this conversation." Jada slowly removed her sunglasses, her gaze unwavering. "I do, but I also believe this meeting is more necessary for you than it is for me." Oliver smirked slightly. "You're a sharp woman, Jada, so I won't sugarcoat it. We want to resolve this incident as quickly as possible to prevent any further damage to the airline's reputation." Jada nodded subtly. "So that means you're trying to contain the situation before it turns into an even bigger news story." Oliver held her stare for a moment before responding. "We're not denying responsibility, but we do need to manage the narrative. You have influence, and that makes this situation sensitive." Jada let out a quiet chuckle. "I don't care about controlling the story. I care about action." She leaned forward, her voice sharper now. "Your airline allowed a passenger like Olivia Wilson to try and diminish me simply because she believed she had power. You allowed part of your flight crew to side with her instead of doing their job. I'm not interested in empty apologies, Oliver. I want change." Double asterisk. The room fell into a heavy silence. Oliver exhaled slowly before turning to Noah and Liam. "Do either of you have anything you'd like to say to Ms. Brown?" Noah looked uncomfortable, but finally spoke. "Ms. Brown, I admit that I acted unfairly. When Olivia filed her complaint, I didn't take the time to fully assess the situation. I immediately took her side. That was a mistake." Jada listened, her expression unwavering. "So why did you do it?" Noah clenched his hands together. "Honestly, because she has power. She's a platinum elite member, one of the airline's biggest spenders. The pressure from higher-ups made me hesitant to push back." Jada nodded slowly. "I understand, but did you ever stop to consider that giving in to that pressure meant making the wrong choice?" Noah remained silent. Jada turned to Liam. "And what about you?" Liam swallowed hard. "I didn't know Olivia before today, but I'll admit that I acted on bias. I made the mistake of letting perception influence my judgment." Oliver folded his arms, tilting his head as he looked at Jada. "What do you want us to do to make this right?" Jada leaned back in her chair, her voice low but firm. "I want 3 things. First, I want a commitment from the airline to revise its internal policies, ensuring that passengers like me will never again be treated differently just because they don't look like they belong in first class. Second, I want a formal investigation into the behavior of the flight crew today. Those who acted inappropriately should be held accountable. And third, I want Olivia Wilson banned from flying with your airline." Oliver raised an eyebrow. A flight ban is a severe action. Jada shrugged. "She tried to use her influence to undermine me, and when that failed, she created chaos. If a passenger disrupts a flight, do you think an airline should continue to accommodate them?" Oliver considered her words, then nodded. "All right, I can agree to the first 2 conditions. As for the third, I need more time to evaluate." Jada nodded. "I'll be waiting." After the meeting, Jada left the VIP lounge feeling lighter. She knew she had won a major battle. But the fight wasn't over. 2 days later, while in a business meeting in Paris, her phone rang. It was Oliver. "I have an update for you. The airline has officially revoked Olivia Wilson's membership. She is permanently banned from flying with us." Jada smiled. "That's the right decision." "And one more thing." Oliver hesitated. "We have officially terminated Noah Davis and Liam Garcia. We cannot keep employees who fail to uphold professional standards." Jada was silent for a moment before replying. "I don't take pleasure in people losing their jobs, but I hope they learned something from this." "I hope so, too." Oliver agreed. As the call ended, Jada gazed out of her hotel window. Paris still shimmered under the golden sunset, but today its light carried a different meaning. It was the light of justice, of change, and of a world where people like Jada would never be dismissed again. Paris at night was breathtaking. The cobblestone streets, the soft glow of cafe lights, the quiet hum of people sipping wine and indulging in unhurried conversations. Jada Brown sat by her hotel window overlooking the city's charm. In front of her was a steaming espresso, but her thoughts were elsewhere. Her fight wasn't just about a seat on a plane. It was about changing a system. A new message lit up her phone. Oliver Rodriguez. "Jada, I just received the official report from HR. The airline has made its final decision." Jada took a deep breath, sipping her coffee before opening the next message. "Olivia Wilson has been permanently banned from all flights with our airline." Jada smiled. At last, justice had been served. 2 weeks after returning to New York, Jada received an invitation from Oliver to visit the airline's headquarters. This meeting wasn't about explanations. It was about creating change. The company's headquarters was in the heart of Manhattan, a glass tower reflecting the blue sky above. As soon as she stepped into the lobby, Jada immediately sensed a different atmosphere. A polite receptionist escorted her to the top floor where Oliver was waiting. "Jada, it's great to see you." Oliver stood and extended his hand. Jada shook it, her gaze sharp. "I'm not here for apologies. I'm here for concrete action." Oliver nodded. "I know, and I have something I want you to see." He signaled for an assistant to bring over a thick binder. "This is the new training program for all airline employees. Jada flipped through the first few pages. She saw detailed programs on unconscious bias, equality in customer service, and protocols for handling discrimination. She looked up, a hint of approval in her eyes. This is a good start. And there's more, Oliver said, turning to another section. Before her was a new policy. All instances of discrimination would be met with strict consequences regardless of rank or seniority. Noah Davis and Liam Garcia had been terminated. Olivia Wilson was permanently banned. But more importantly, the system itself had begun to change. After the meeting, as Jada stepped out of the building, her phone vibrated. An unknown number. She answered. "Ms. Brown, this is Noah Davis." Jada raised an eyebrow. "Noah? I didn't think we had anything left to discuss." "I know." Noah's voice was slow and measured. "I just wanted to apologize." Jada was silent for a moment. "Why?" "Because I was wrong. Because I let fear of losing my job push me into choices I'm not proud of. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I've learned from this." Jada exhaled softly. "What's next for you?" Noah chuckled lightly, but there was a bitterness to it. "I'll find another job. Hopefully this time I won't make the same mistakes." Jada didn't respond immediately. She knew Noah wasn't inherently a bad person, but his weakness had made him part of the problem. Finally, she said, "I hope that next time you have the chance to stand on the right side, you won't hesitate." "I hope so too," Noah replied before ending the call. A few days later, Jada appeared at a panel discussion on diversity and equity in the airline industry. As she stepped onto the stage, she scanned the audience. CEOs, executives, and influential figures were all watching her. Jada took a deep breath and began. "My story isn't just about a seat on a plane. It's about how a system can be distorted by bias, how those in power can manipulate it to exclude the people they don't deem worthy." She paused for a moment, letting her gaze sweep across the room. "But I've also realized something. True power doesn't come from VIP memberships or elite customer lists. It comes from resilience. It comes from standing up when others want you to sit down." The room fell silent. No one spoke. Everyone was thinking. Jada nodded, satisfied. Today, she hadn't just reclaimed a seat on a plane, she had reclaimed her voice. And more importantly, she had paved the way for others to stand up too. At the end of her speech, a middle-aged man stepped onto the stage. "Ms. Brown, I'm one of the investors in the airline. I've been following your story, and I just want to say, you were right." Jada narrowed her eyes. "Right about what?" The man smiled. "Right, that change doesn't happen unless people are willing to fight for it." He pulled out a business card and handed it to her. "If you want to expand your platform, I have the resources to help you do it." Jada looked down at the card, then smiled. A new door had just opened. That night, Jada sat on the balcony of her apartment overlooking the glowing skyline of New York City. This battle had drained her, but it had also made her stronger. She pulled out her phone and sent one last message to Oliver. "Thank you for keeping your promise." Oliver responded almost instantly. "Thank you for not giving up." Jada set her phone down and closed her eyes. Tomorrow she would keep going, but tonight she allowed herself to enjoy a moment of peace, because she knew that the world doesn't change without those who dare to stand up. Jada Brown stepped into the headquarters of one of the world's largest airlines. Everything had changed since that turbulent flight. From being a passenger subjected to injustice, she had become a respected figure, someone who had stood up against the system to demand real change. But the story wasn't over. Justice wasn't just a moment, it was a journey. She was led to a large conference room where the airline's top executives were waiting for her. The only person in the room she truly trusted was Oliver Rodriguez. He had played a crucial role in holding the airline accountable and ensuring that real change was put in place. "Jada, it's good to have you here." Oliver began with a genuine smile. Jada nodded, setting her briefcase on the table. She wasn't here for an apology. She was here to ensure progress. "Tell me," she said, "what has the airline done to make sure that what happened to me will never happen to anyone else?" The first to speak was the airline's CEO, a middle-aged man with streaks of silver in his hair. He knew this wasn't just a courtesy meeting. This was a conversation that would determine the company's future. "We've taken significant steps," he began, "including implementing a new training program focused on unconscious bias and handling sensitive customer service situations." Jada flipped through the documents in front of her. The proposed training plan was extensive and well-structured, but there was still one concern. Training programs only work if they're properly enforced, Jada said, her eyes scanning the executives in the room. "Can you guarantee that your employees won't just learn this but actually apply it in practice?" Oliver nodded and added, "We're not just training employees, we're changing internal policies. Any form of discrimination will be met with strict consequences, even for senior staff." Jada remained silent for a moment, considering what she had just heard. "What about the passengers?" she asked. "How do you ensure that people like Olivia Wilson won't continue behaving this way?" The CEO glanced at Oliver, who was ready with an answer. "We've introduced a no-fly list for passengers who violate our conduct policies. Olivia Wilson has been permanently banned from our airline, and any passenger who engages in similar behavior will face the same consequences." Jada nodded slowly. This was real change. It wasn't just employees being held accountable. It was also passengers who believed they could use their wealth to trample over others. But there was still one more thing. Jada looked directly at the CEO and said, "You need to make these changes public." The room fell silent. "You made mistakes," she continued, "and if you want to regain the public's trust, you need to acknowledge that." Oliver smirked slightly. He knew Jada wouldn't stop here. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for everyone who had ever been in her position. The CEO let out a sigh, then nodded. "We will issue an official statement, and I will be the first to review it before you publish anything," Jada added, leaving them no room for excuses. She hadn't come here for empty promises. She was here to ensure that justice wasn't just served, it was seen. After the meeting, as Jada was preparing to leave the airline's headquarters, her phone rang. An unknown number. She hesitated for a moment, but picked up. "This is Jada Brown." "Jada, it's me, Olivia Wilson." Jada was surprised, but kept her composure. "I don't think we have anything left to discuss, Olivia." "I know." Olivia's voice was uncertain. I just wanted to say that I lost a lot after what happened." Jada raised an eyebrow. And you expect me to feel sorry for you? No, Olivia replied. I just want to understand why. Why did you fight so hard? Jada sighed. Because I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for everyone who has ever been treated the way I was. And I fought so that people like you understand that the world doesn't revolve around power or money. It revolves around respect. There was a pause. Then Olivia spoke slowly. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I think I need to learn how to change. Good, Jada said, but that's your journey, not mine. Then she ended the call. Jada Brown's story was more than just a personal incident. It became a symbol of the fight for justice, respect, and equality. Through every moment and every action, she proved that anyone can create change if they have the courage to stand up and confront injustice. In society, there are people who believe that status, wealth, or power give them the right to walk over others. Olivia Wilson was a prime example. She thought she could force Jada to give up her seat simply because she had more influence. But Jada proved something important. Respect is not something that can be bought or traded. It is a fundamental right that everyone deserves. No one has the right to treat others as if they are less valuable because of their race, background, or social status. If we do not stand up for respect, injustice will continue to exist. Jada could have chosen to give in. She could have stayed quiet and moved to another seat to avoid trouble. But she didn't, because silence in the face of injustice is complicity. She understood that if she backed down, Olivia Wilson would continue treating others the same way, and if everyone stayed silent, discrimination would never end. The lesson here is clear. Do not be afraid to stand up when you know you are right. A small act can create a big change. When Jada held the airline accountable, she wasn't just seeking punishment for those responsible. She wanted to change the system. She demanded not only the dismissal of those involved, but also policy changes, retraining for employees, and even a no-fly list for passengers who engaged in discriminatory behavior. True justice is not about revenge. It's about ensuring that the same mistakes never happen again. Jada didn't yell, argue, or threaten. She simply used calmness and logic to address the problem. While Olivia Wilson tried to force her way through anger and influence, Jada stood firm, spoke the truth, and acted intelligently. This teaches us an important lesson. You don't need to shout to be heard. Sometimes resilience and composure are the strongest weapons of all. One of the biggest mistakes Olivia Wilson, Noah Davis, and Liam Garcia made was judging Jada based solely on her appearance. They didn't think she was successful. They didn't think she had influence. They didn't think she had the right to speak up. But they were wrong. The lesson here is clear. Never underestimate someone just because they don't look like what you expect. Success, intelligence, and power can come from anyone at any time. Situations like this happen because people like Olivia Wilson are used to never being challenged. They believe that money can buy everything, including respect and authority. But when Jada stood up to the system, she proved that no matter your status, everyone must be held accountable for their actions. No one should be allowed to act unfairly without consequences. There were moments when Jada may have felt exhausted, moments when she could have given up, but she persisted. She persisted when she had to challenge the flight crew. She persisted when she had to stand against an unjust system. She persisted when she demanded real change, not just an empty apology, and in the end, she won. So what's the lesson here? Big changes don't happen overnight. But if you stay patient, persistent, and refuse to back down, you will see results. Justice wasn't just about seeing Olivia Wilson removed from the plane or watching employees be fired for their misconduct. Justice was about changing the entire system. Justice meant ensuring that this never happened to anyone else. Justice meant holding corporations, companies, and institutions accountable for their policies. Justice meant turning outrage into real action. Jada didn't just fight for herself. She fought for everyone who had ever been treated unfairly, and for those who might face the same injustice in the future. Jada Brown's story wasn't just an isolated incident. It was a reminder that justice doesn't happen on its own. It has to be fought for. Don't stay silent when you witness injustice. Don't be afraid to stand up for what is right. Don't judge someone based on appearances. And most importantly, remember that justice is not a single moment. It is a long and ongoing journey. If we don't speak up, if we don't take action, then who will?